What if I told you that you could drive through a billion-year-old scar where North America almost split in two? How about that you can stand on shorelines that haven't seen waves in 11,000 years? Welcome to Roadside Geology on the Rock Record. I'm Jess, a geologist, and today we're taking one of the most geologically rich road trips in North America. We're driving from Minneapolis to Duluth and then up the north shore of Lake Superior. It's 300 miles of glacial lakes, ancient volcanoes, and stories written in stone. As always, the series is inspired by the Roadside Geology books by the Geological Society of America. Today I am using the Roadside Geology of Minnesota, of course. So that's pretty much the journey from the Twin Cities to Duluth. That route covers glacial lakes, ancient sandstone quarries, agates in the sediment, and the first glimpses of the billion-year-old rocks that dominate the North Shore. So now we're going to go ahead and roll through the city of Duluth and drive what is supposedly known as one of the world's most magnificent drives. Oh my goodness, one of the world's most magnificent drives. I know how much you love it when I say things like that, but I swear I do not come up with these names. That's just what it says on the brochure, okay? This is a bold claim, but Skyline Parkway doesn't just give you sweeping views of Lake Superior from 450 to 600 feet above the city. It also takes you on a 25-mile journey through time, riding the old shoreline of a glacial lake that was here 11,000 years ago. All right, so from up here on Skyline Drive, we can get a great view of the iron ore docks behind me. This is where boats are loaded with taconite pellets. These pellets are shipped to steel mills on the lower Great Lakes, and they come from taconite plants in the central Mesabi Iron Range, about 60 miles to the north. The ore trains wind their way down the Gabbro hillside to the docks. If you look near the ore docks, you'll see piles of loose material. The big dark pile, those are taconite pellets, small 1/4 to 1/2 inch diameter balls of processed iron ore. The big white piles is limestone imported from Michigan, which gets transported by rail to the Mesabi Iron Range and incorporated into the taconite pellets as a flux. Flux combines with the impurities during the steelmaking process, making them easy to separate from the metal. Alright, so supposedly along Skyline Drive, there's supposed to be a plaque marking the location of Oneta. Oneta? Wonota? I don't know how to pronounce it. But it was the home of the Merritt brothers. I couldn't find the plaque, unfortunately. But it's an important story to tell, and this is a great spot to do it. In 1890, the Merritt brothers discovered iron ore in the Mesabi Iron Range at a place called Iron Mountain, about 50 miles north of here. And that discovery changed everything. The iron ore docks that you can see from this lookout are still in use today, but now they ship taconite pellets instead of raw ore. Driving along Skyline Parkway is such a treat, and there's so many pullouts and cool stops and even some hiking. One of the spots that I recommend stopping at for a great view over the harbor is Enger Tower. Although be warned, this place gets pretty busy. The Enger Memorial Tower was constructed of Gabbro in 1939, and you can even climb up it for a better view. Right after Enger Park, we cross a bridge at Twin Lakes, and this is where things get really interesting from a geology standpoint. This is where that Gabbro turns into basaltic lava flows. If you've got a few minutes, the Roadside Geology book recommends turning left at the T by Twin Ponds, and you can take a short loop road. There's supposedly a really good exposure of the Gabbro that you can see the coarse crystals formed as magma cooled slowly deep underground, beneath all of those lava flows stacked above it. Alright, so this is a nice spot to get a view of Minnesota Point, the long, skinny sandbar stretching out in the western tip of Lake Superior. There's a geologic marker here describing the Duluth Superior Harbor, which is the most inland freshwater port in the world. Over 1,000 ships per year come through this port, hauling iron ore from the Mesabi Iron Range and grain from the Midwest. But here's the wild part. This harbor has a pretty unique geological problem. It's drowning. Let me explain. When those massive glaciers covered the Lake Superior Basin during the last ice age, their sheer weight pressed down on the Earth's crust, like if you push your hand into memory foam. Ever since the ice melted, the crust has been slowly bouncing back, or rebounding, to its pre-glacial elevation. But here's the catch. The ice was thicker and lasted longer in the northeast part of the lake, So that end is rebounding faster than the southwest end, which is where we're at now. So imagine you have a tub full of water and you start lifting one end of the tub. The water sloshes toward the other end, right? That's basically what's happening to Lake Superior. The whole basin is tilting southwest, and the water is rising at Duluth at nearly 1 foot every 100 years. So in about 500 years, the parking lot at Duluth Entertainment and Convention Center, the one right on the edge of the harbor, will be underwater. This is called isostatic rebound. The Earth is still responding to ice that melted 10,000 years ago. All right, one of our final stops here along Skyline Drive is Hawk Ridge. There's a plaque here that says the Lake Superior Basin was carved out 600 million years ago by a glacier. But I'm here to tell you, according to the Roadside Geology book, that is incorrect. So let me tell you what actually happened. Lake Superior's basin wasn't carved by glaciers 600 million years ago. It was carved by tectonic rifting about 1.1 billion years ago during that mid-continent rift period. What the glaciers did do much more recently, like in the last tens of thousands of years, was scour the soft sedimentary rock that had been deposited in that rift basin. So they deepened the basin, widened it, but they didn't create it. So glaciers are kind of like the cleanup crew, not the original architects. They remodeled the basement, but they didn't build the house. From here, we're going to start heading back towards downtown Duluth, and we're going to lose elevation pretty fast. Lake Superior sits at about 602 feet in elevation, but much of Skyline Drive here hangs out at around 1,050 feet. That's not random. The elevation that we've been driving along most of this route marks the old shoreline of Glacial Lake Duluth, the ancestor of Lake Superior. Glacial Lake Duluth formed about 11,000 years ago as the massive superior lobe of the glacier melted back to the northeast. So picture this. As that ice was retreating, it was still blocking the natural drainage routes through the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean. So all of that meltwater was trapped, dammed up. The lake rose way higher than it sits today, and Skyline Drive is literally perched on that ancient beach. I just love the idea that we're driving along this ancient shoreline that hasn't seen waves in over 10,000 years. If you want to know more about ancient glacial lakes and their historic shorelines, check out my Roadside Geology of I-90 video, where I talk a little bit about Glacial Lake Missoula. So I hope you enjoyed this section of the video on Skyline Drive. It has been called one of the world's most magnificent drives. That's a pretty bold claim, right? Would you agree with it based on what you saw? But we have more to explore, so let's keep rolling. Alrighty, so now we're going to be heading northeast out of Duluth on Minnesota Highway 61. Officially called the North Shore Scenic Drive, but the locals just call it the North Shore Highway. This 153-mile stretch hugs the shoreline of Lake Superior, and we're driving right along one of the most significant geological features in North America, that mid-continent rift that we've been talking about